So 2023 has come to an end. Let's see who made that top 10.
It's about to go down.
Check this out, y'all. Read a book, read a book, read a book. Read a book, read a book, read a book. R-E-A-D-A-B-O,
Okay, if you didn't know by the intro, this is going to be the top 9.9 books of all of 2023. Before I go on, man, 2023 was the best year of reading that I have ever had. I read some bangers this year. I jumped into different genres this year, different authors, and I just had an amazing time, understanding style and structure and tasting new authors and genres this year really benefited me a lot. And I have to say that these books that I'm going to share with you are the cream of the crop. So why don't I just get right into it? At 0.9 is going to be Titanium Noir by Nick Harkaway. This was a suggestion from Robert from Punk Rock Cereal Bowl. He suggested this book to me because he knows I like a genre gumbo. And that's what this was. This was a mix-up of genres. We have a detective noir novel mashed up with a futuristic sci-fi novel set in an urban setting. This is a first-person story told by our POV, Carl Saunders. He is kind of a detective, a specialized detective. He looks into murders or crimes involving titans. Now, what titans are the uber rich are able to purchase a substance that will help them live forever, grow stronger, and even grow taller. So they are called titans. Nick Harkaway does an amazing job of providing you with a gritty, raw, punchy dialogue from our protagonist that was very funny at times. He also does an amazing job of developing this culture of these elite rich titans. This culture is very eccentric, erotic, and just dark and sometimes absurd. These are immortals that are living forever. These shots, really boost not only their strength, but also their hormones and their emotions. So this world that Nick Harkaway drug us into was very, dark, erotic, and the people that we meet are, these elite eccentrics that are just fascinating characters and a fascinating world to dive into, a world of essentially immortals. It was very well done. It was thrilling, and it also had some twists and turns while we're trying to uncover the reason for a murdered titan. It was very well executed, and I just love this book from start to finish. Okay, the next book at number 9 is going to be The Drawing of the Three by, Stephen King. This is the second book in the Dark Tower series. I feel that this book just stepped it up in so many different ways, and really, when I look and when I hear people talk about Stephen King and how he does horror very well and just creates these scenes with such intensity and emotion, that's what I found within The Drawing of the Three. Now, the Dark Tower gave us, an atmosphere, a world that was very intriguing. I believe the world building in the first one was very well done. I like the dream sequences in the first one. Though there is a creature within this series, the name just bothers me. I hate it. It ends with Strosity, and when I say it, it just throws me off, but that's besides the point, because when we get into The Drawing of the Three, we start getting new characters. And it is just intriguing to dive into these characters' backstory. One of the characters that our main protagonist, Roland, the gunslinger, he goes through these doors and he meets two separate characters that become a major part of this story. One of those characters is Eddie Dean. Stephen King and I did a lot of research on a type of character like Eddie Dean, and I think that Stephen King knocked it on the head completely. Eddie Dean is a junkie. He is going through withdrawal throughout this story and trying to make sense of his world and why he is the way he is. And it was just very well done. These are some of Eddie's internal dialogue was once my internal dialogue at one point, and that character was funny, he was witty, he was not an idiot, and you can tell. I love that when, we get somebody with a disease such as addiction, we don't really realize how intelligent some of these people are, and I just thought that Eddie Dean was an amazing character. We run into Odetta James, and she was also another character that had an intriguing backstory that just drew me in. I wanted to find out more about Odetta James and why she is on this journey with these other two gunslingers. It was just amazing. One of the things about fantasy that I'm not a big fan of is when we develop this amazing world that is just totally separate from our own. Within the Dark Tower, our world leaks into that world, and that I don't love that, because I love this nuanced world with different creatures and characters. I do that to escape this world, so when you bring this one in, it throws me off a little bit, but I think Stephen King did it wonderfully. There were intense scenes, there were thrilling scenes, there were emotional scenes, and the drawing of the three, in my opinion, is where this story kicks off. So yes, The Drawing of the Three is my number 9 book of the year. Okay, number 8 is going to be We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. This is going to be one of the best first books in a series I've read all year. Mike Shackle does an amazing job of character work in this. These characters are very real. They are very well fleshed out. Their emotions you can cut with a knife. The tension is just ramped up to 11 in this. It is a brutal book, which I loved. It wasn't overly brutal. It was brutal in the right moments where you were just like, damn, this is effed up. But I just love this book. I love these characters and their storylines and how they're all converging. I'm definitely moving on to the second book in this series within the next few weeks, because We Are the Dead was just an amazing start to a series, and I just hear it gets better and better. Can't wait to move on with that one. So number 8, We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. Number 7 is going to be Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. Guys, no book has made me think more than this one. This one just had so many layers to it. It was beautifully written. This is a historical fiction. This is historical fiction. It takes place in the Mexico-American border, I think in like the 1830s. It is brutal, it is visceral, but it is beautifully done. The themes in it and the character work were just fantastic. This is about a boy who is trying to make it on his own in a brutal world and ends up in a scalping crew run by the legendary bad guy, Judge Holden. The judge is just, he's a mystical figure in a real book. It was just amazing. The atmosphere that, that McCarthy created around him, and again, no dialogue from any character in any book has made me think more than that of the judge. I went in and started looking up history and philosophy and, criminology. Like, I went off and, and It was just, I can't even say enough about this book. I will tell you, it is not an enjoyable book. It's not a fun read. I don't really like fun shit. So this one just, asked questions that I have never asked myself and just opened up a part of my mind that, has been dormant since college. So yes, number 7 is going to be Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. All right, number 6 is going to be probably one of the most intriguing authors I have come across this year. Number 6, we're on 6. Number 6 is going to be Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. Folks, this one was bonkers and I loved it. This is about a city that was built off of a dead giant. The city's called New Chromosome. We have excellent character, excellent world building. This city felt so real. Mieville is a master of creating atmosphere and building a world. It was just fantastic. A dark world, that had this organic, natural feel to it. We had sentient beings of cactus people and women with scarab heads on. One of them was one of our points of view. Her name was Lynn, and she was an artist, and you got her point of view because she could sign language. It was fantastic. We followed a doctor who gets involved in some, shady shit, and it just becomes this supernatural sci-fi horror bonanza that I just love. The only reason that this book probably isn't higher up on my list is just because I felt it drug on a little too long in some aspects, because I believe when you read this book, it is considered a standalone, but it feels so epic in nature just by how Mieville writes this world into your brain. It was just fantastic. It was dark. It had horror elements, sci-fi elements, fantasy elements. It was just off the wall. So I suggest everybody go give China Mieville a shot and go read Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. So we are down to the middle of the pack. And number 5 is going to be another new author for me this year, and that will be Dead House Gates by Steven Erikson. I mean, when we talk epic, this is as epic as it comes, man. This epic is on level 11. I'm telling you, this man just writes such a beautiful, rich world with amazing characters. And his imagination is just, there are very few who do it like Steven Erikson. I have to say, this is such a well-realized world. When I get into an Erikson book, man, I am immediately transported into a scene, into a dialogue with amazing characters. And this book is really where this series hit off for me. I read Gardens of the Moon, and it was very, discombobulated. I really didn't know what was going on, but I followed on with the story, and I was just getting developed into this world. When I got to Dead House Gates, I felt like I had grasped Steven Erikson's writing style, and I was immersed right from page 1. The events in this were so cinematically beautiful. I can still see them in my mind's eye as we talk right now. There were characters that were developed so well in this book that had maybe 10 lines throughout the book, but I was absolutely enthralled by this character and his storyline, and it was just amazing. Dead House Gates, the setting was a desert, and Steven Erikson really just brought this desert alive. We also dealt with some themes and some, characters that really have dealt with things in their life, dealt with trauma, and we deal, this series is a lot about compassion that was just so well set up by Erickson, and it was just delivered and executed perfectly, in my opinion, within Deadhouse Gates. Memories of Ice, the next book after this, they were very close, but I'm going to give it to Deadhouse Gates just because I remember the entire story, and this is a freaking chunker. I remember everything that went on in this, and yes, it has to be my number 5 book of the year. Number 4, I wish I had this book because this series is going to be, this is the series that I am just enthralled with at this moment, and I cannot wait to jump into the next book. So number 4 is going to be Howling Dark by Christopher Rocchio. Folks, this book is where this series just explodes, man. I mean, within Empire of Silence, you do see how amazing a writer Christopher Rocchio is. He develops a beautiful world that just, propels you within the story. His prose is beautiful. His world building is just on another level. It's so grand. And, the character work I thought could have done a bit of a brush up in Empire of Silence. But when we get to Howling Dark, that's where this series sets off for me. I mean, it wasn't really with the characters and more of the tone of this series. We end up leaving the Empire, and as soon as we leave the Empire, man, this dark filter just flows over this story, and it really got into some horror elements, and the sci-fi and fantasy really converged within this book. The action was amazing. The themes, the philosophy took off in this one, and I have to say that Howling Dark was just amazing, and I can't wait to jump in to Demon in White. Howling Dark was the first book that I immersive read, and it was fantastic. If you guys had the audiobook, whoever that audiobook narrator was, he did an amazing job. I wish I could look it up right now. I probably should have done that beforehand. But, I'm not the best at this. So, Howling Dark is going to be number 4 on my list, folks. Get into the Sun Eater series because it is fantastic. Number 3 is going to be my man down here, R. Scott Baker. This is the second book in the Aspect Emperor series, and it is called The White Luck Warrior. Folks, this is the reason I do not have, I didn't really give you my rules. These are my rules. I don't put multiple authors on my list, all right? Because if I have multiple authors on my list, this man would own the list as well as, Erickson and Ray Bradbury basically would own my list. So this is the reason I am only putting one book in this series up, and it was my favorite book. If you guys don't know, R. Scott Baker has a multiple series called the Second Apocalypse series. The first series is a 3-book series called The Prince of Nothing, and then he goes on to the Aspect Emperor, which is a 4-book quintizy. I don't know what it's called. It's 4 books. But within the Prince of Nothing series, Baker has a certain writing style. It is very, there's a lot of exposition. His words are very difficult to grasp. He can even seem pompous in his writing style throughout the Prince of Nothing series. However, when we jumped into the Aspect Emperor series, when we got to The Judging Eye, which is the first book in that series, his writing style shifted a little bit to where it wasn't as meta, and we got more of the scene and more of the story throughout that book, throughout The Judging Eye, as well as throughout The White Luck Warrior. These 2 books were just easier to take in for me, and I loved it because I love this story. And this is where this story just, sparks just flew. because I love characters. There are two characters in this, Inrelatus, who is one of our old character's sons, as well as Cleric, who is an immortal non-man with power. These two characters are some of Baker's greatest creations, in my opinion, because I was just so intrigued by them. I mean, he pulled me into their stories so much. One character we barely even got any of, and he made me fall in love with that character before I even met him. That's how good the writing was, I feel, within this book. Also, Cleric, we understood who he was and a little of his story within the Judging Eye, but when we got to the White Luck Warrior, Cleric's story, in my opinion, really opened up, and we got to see his history and got more into the madness that are non-men in this series. It was fantastic. There is also another thing that happens at the end of this series that I didn't think was going to happen, and all of a sudden it did, and I couldn't put the book down for the last 100 pages. It was amazing. It was deep. It was dark and brutal, and I loved every damn second of it. So number 3, it has to be The White Luck Warrior by R. Scott Baker. We are down to number 2, and what number 2 is, I think I mentioned this author a few minutes ago. It has to be Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, folks. This man's packs a punch in his writing. I mean, this is a very short story, but his prose are so heavy. There's so much behind them. This is about a father and son who take on an evil carnival that has come into their town. I remember watching this movie as a kid and being absolutely horrified by it. And I didn't know it was a book. I mean, I was maybe 4 or 5 when I watched it. And now that I grew up and found out it was a book and how good it was, I picked it up and I was floored. The man's writing is very rhythmic and poetic. It can be dark at times, but man, when he hits you with themes, he punched me in the gut. You know, we have father and son relationship here. We have a father, you know, feeling his age. And I am a father in my elder years. I wouldn't say elder years. I'm almost 45, but, you know, I have young kids. And to hear this father talk about his life and his regrets just hit home. It was so well done, the writing in this book. But at times, the writing style changed from that heavy and deep tone to a more happy and magical tone. You know, Bradbury really had, you know, played with his words to really create this atmosphere of intensity and just magic. It was an amazing book. I tell everybody who will listen to go get Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. You will not be disappointed. I don't care if you like dark fantasy, romance, or philosophy. This one's going to hit you in the feels. It was amazing. Man, I felt for the dad. I felt for the kid. You know, Bradbury really brought the mind of a child into this one. The dialogue between children and our internal dialogue when we find these, you know, what we believe are going to be lifelong friends when we are young. And then as we look back at it as an adult, as a father, it is just exceptional, heartwarming, beautiful, dark, poetic, and go get this book. That's all I'm going to say. Number 2, Ray Bradbury, Something Wicked This Way Comes. All right, we have gotten down to the number 1, and what's that going to be? I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone. I've been yelling on the mountains about this book. It has to be The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I've never experienced anything like this. This was just so beautifully written. It is poetic. It is melodic at times. It is heartfelt. And the action scenes are amazing. The characters are amazing. It is dark. It is visceral. It is trippy. It is just fantastic. There are lines in this that I just keep underlining. The start of this book I just love. I would advise everybody to go watch the interview on Simon Jimenez. And when he starts this book, he says, "This one's for me." And wow, this is fantastic. What an imagination. This is a story about stories, man. And there are layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of stories just crammed into this. They melt right into each other. And I feel it was executed to perfection. This, I will dare say, is a perfect book, in my opinion. This has a fairy tale-esque feel to it. It also has a contemporary feel. I will put this book in new weird fiction because we have a traditional fantasy setting with some like urban slang and dialogue. I love it. The themes in this book are exceptional. I beg anybody who is listening, I don't care if you like dark fantasy. I don't care if you like, literary shit. Dude, go get this. Everyone. Lords, ladies, undecideds, go get this book because it is just fantastic. And I can't say enough about The Spear Cuts Through Water. I am doing a read-along on my channel right now. If you have this book, come down, start reading, and talk about it with us. We have a bunch of people down there, and we're having an amazing time doing that. So, folks, my top 10. What'd you think about them? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If this is your first time here and you enjoyed my my little shtick, why don't you hit a like? Why don't you hit a subscribe? Stay a while. Hang out, bruh. Anyway, I'm gonna end this video right now because I'm getting a little crazy. So I will see you guys on the flip side. I got a lot coming. I got a lot of books I'm reading, so stick around. I'll be dropping reviews like I always do. So I'll see you guys on that flip side. Peace.